Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out Bard's Gold, which is a $5 90s inspired retro platformer. So, I don't really know what I'm going to say about this game. I had a but then I didn't have anything to follow it up. Our options menu is pretty lightweight. You've got effect and music volume and your language, and you've got your controls there, which are pretty simple. Not much else to it, really. So, we'll just hit start right away. The game's got 3 regular modes. You've got normal mode, which gives you more lives, but you get less gems and less randomness. If you go to retro mode, you get less lives, but more gems and more randomness. And you've got Roguelike, which the other 2 modes give you permanent upgrades every time you die that you can afford to buy with gems. But with Roguelike, you don't get any of those. You start out with just a health bar that gives you 3 hits, lots of randomness, and lots of gems, but no checkpoints. So, but thankfully, all those hits are on 1 life, which makes a lot of sense when I'll explain later on. But we'll start off with Retro, because I've got enough lives to make Retro last at least a little bit. So, here we are in Bard's Gold. You can start off at any level that you've unlocked so far. Unfortunately, after about an hour's worth of play, I've only gone to level 1. Only through level 1, I should say. Like, the level's got like 7 or 8 something stages at this point, because I've been up to like 1/6 and died, and I still haven't gone to World 2, so, you know, that's the thing. It's a pretty simple walk and jump platform. You've got a weapon with your square button, and you've got equipment that you can buy. You've got your bonus down there, your lives, your gems, and a map and a key and some stuff, all that. But let's actually get into a level before we start explaining everything. So, this game's meant to be reminiscent of old platformers from the 90s, like Rainbow Islands and Adventure Island and stuff like that. So, you walk around these levels, you have a time limit up in the top right there, and the time limit on this level is 2 minutes. And you have to wander around the levels, and you have to find the key, which I've already grabbed. And once you've found the key, you can move on to the next level just by going to the door. However, we're not going to do that, because since I have the magic glasses, I can shoot stuff and find secrets, and if you shoot all of the secrets, you get a bonus. In this case, it's an extra life. So we start out with a fair few lives, but those tend to go away very quickly in this game. So, this game is designed to be relatively difficult, and it is. The levels are handmade, but they're randomly placed in the level order, so you never know what level you're going to play next. However, I've ended up playing through the same level a fair few times because, as it turns out, there aren't that many variants on these levels. The majority of the levels are based on remembering traps, because a lot of the traps in this game are either very hard to see or almost invisible. So, you really do need to at least set them off at least once for the most part to see where they are and how to avoid them, which is kind of annoying, honestly, especially with traps like the spike traps and evil tomb traps like this, because they're very hard to see just by casually glancing at them. So you have to remember basically where everything is, because if you don't remember where everything is, chances are you'll just stumble right into it again. And the problem is that despite the fact that there aren't that many levels, there's still a pretty high amount of them, so it's actually quite hard to remember where most of the traps are. And it kind of sucks, honestly. Also, yes, I did just set off a very bad thing indeed, but we won't have to worry about him for a little bit longer. There he is. Remind you of Spelunky much? But thankfully, this guy only came because I got all the secrets, and as it said before, I felt an evil presence. So we just have to try and take this guy out, but if we do, we get a pretty decent reward for it. The first reward I got for beating this guy was the, oh shit, okay, hang on. I'll go into the shop now, because I'm running out of time to do this level. So, the shop lets you buy a bunch of things. So, for example, right now, since I've got 4 lives, buying an extra life is going to cost me a lot. But if you lose a life, it will bring everything back down to a regular thing. So, there's a bunch of things here. The magic glasses will show you where secrets are. The shield saves your equipment after 1 death, and we'll get onto that. The sphere barrier, I have no idea what that does, because I have used it once and it didn't save me from anything. It says it might save you from something, so I guess it might only work from time to time. But there's also a chakram, a 3-way knife, and an axe here. But I prefer the axe because it's the most powerful weapon in the game as far as I can tell. So I just bought an axe, and I've bought a shield. So hopefully they'll save me a little bit of trouble. And I'm about to get my ass handed to me by this guy. Oh, I'm going to have to go for the exit. I don't have time to go and get the treasure chest from this guy. So, oh well. Could have bought the clock to give myself more time, but I really didn't want to waste the gems, and you'll understand why. So, the way this game works is that if you die and you don't have the shield, which I do, you will lose all your weapons and all your equipment. And there is a bunch of equipment in this game which is really hard to get your hands on, especially there are some things you might get for beating a boss or something. There is no way this is not a trap. There is no way. Yep, there it is. So, you can get, like, a bunch of weapons and a bunch of power-ups. You can get, like, stronger weapons via power upgrades as well. And you can get these all via, like, beating bosses or buying them or finding them or stuff like that. Pretty simple stuff, right? But again, if you die, which you can do in this game by taking exactly one hit, you will lose everything you're carrying unless you spend money on money on a shield, right? So you have to be extremely I was saying you have to be extremely careful with what you do in this game because it is very easy to just blunder into something and die because the game is not very forgiving. And as you can see, there is a... Or at least it looks like there's supposed to be... there's a door. Okay, let's go into the door and see what's in there. Flamey's treasure. Great. I actually know this. So, yeah, as I said, if you lose everything in this game, there's basically no point in continuing, and I'll explain why. So, when you're playing, when you eventually die, you will end up doing something really, really silly. You have your gems that you have left over, not the entire amount of gems that you collected throughout the entire playthrough. The gems you have left over will be available to spend on permanent upgrades, right? So, you have a bunch of permanent upgrades you can buy. There's 12 of them, and I've only got 2, which is... Well, right now, one gives me a 10% chance of an enemy dropping a bonus gem pile when they die, right? So I get like 10 extra gems per enemy or something like that, depending on how generous the game feels like being. And there is one that gives you an extra life. However, so as I said before, the gems are left over from whatever you have left over at the end of the game once you've died. So if you go buying an upgrade, you won't... Oh yeah, by the way, once you collect all 5 of these, you get a specific item that it rolls for you. Unfortunately, it only gave me a bunch of extra gems. An extra life would have been much more useful, and I don't know where the key is for this, so I basically just have to leave, which is really unfortunate, because I've got 40 seconds left on the clock, and I don't know where the key is in this stage. And I died. And I'm probably going to run out of time because... See, now that I've lost my now that I don't have my shield anymore, I'm back down to just this pissy little knife. So, I have to deal with this shitty weapon. And I'm in an even worse situation than I was in before because I have to take out this thing. And I just double jumped right into the spike. So, I'm basically screwed at this point, right? So, if you spend a ton of gems on a weapon and... like a piece of equipment or something, and then you die, you lose everything. So there is like 0 point to spending money on any equipment because you basically just want to be, you're basically just gonna, Jesus! You're gonna want to be buying everything that you can get, you're gonna want to be buying as many of the end game upgrades as you can get your hands on, which means no spending money on the items in game, which makes everything really frustrating. And this might be okay if the actual game itself was actually, like, satisfying to play in terms of its combat or something like that, right? But the game's combat is just thoroughly unsatisfying. None of the weapons have any real kick to them, and they have no impact, and the platforming itself is just basic platforming. And considering that the majority of this game's difficulty comes from all the traps, then it's not that satisfying at all. Now, I am playing on the retro difficulty, and considering I've done this before in the past, you might be asking, well, have you played anything other than the retro difficulty? Because these might be things that just apply to the retro difficulty, right? You know, fair assumption, but you'd be wrong. Because when you're playing on the retro difficulty, all these things that I've gone over before, like losing all your weapons when you die, having all your gems be like, what's the word I'm looking for? Having all your gems be relevant at the end of the game as well as during the game, because they take end game upgrades. All these things apply to the normal difficulty as well. And the worst thing about the normal difficulty is that you get less gems by playing it, right? So this is how you upgrade stuff, by the way. You spend gems on it, and then you come back and you do it again and again and again. It's a lot like Rogue Legacy in that respect. But yeah, when you play retro difficulty, you get less gems. So it's like there's 0 point to playing the normal difficulty, I should say, not the retro difficulty. When you play on normal, you get less gems. So it's like, there's no point to playing that, because if you play retro, you'll get the end game upgrades faster. And considering how much you'll have to learn in order to successfully make it through the game, you'll start remembering stuff a hell of a lot quicker. So you end up having to like just do stuff like that, right? It's just frustrating, and considering there's nothing else about the game that's really good, it's not really worth the effort. I mean, there is a bunch of other stuff too that I haven't talked about yet, like the graphics. Like, the graphics in this game are not fantastic. I mean, the guy did them all by himself. This is a one-man effort, so it's actually kind of impressive that he did them all by himself, right? But it's still not particularly the best style to look at, right? You can look, just die please, thank you. You can look up and down using the right analog stick, by the way, which is very useful if you need to go over a long drop. I just need to learn to actually do that from time to time. And the music was done out of house. It's the only thing that wasn't done out of house, so, you know, that's kind of a thing. Not that big of a deal, but, oh, please let that be Zero Time Dilemma. I'm literally sitting by my inbox right now hoping for Zero Time Dilemma to come in. That's basically all I've been waiting for all day. But, yeah. So, the game's difficulty, combined with the fact that it doesn't really do anything particularly... what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't really do anything particularly interesting, is just... it makes me incapable of recommending it, because I'm just gonna pull out my favorite example of a retro platformer. My two favorite examples, actually. Ghosts and Goblins and Castlevania. Those two games had extremely satisfying combat, and the level designs were, well, basically more specifically, he claims these levels were handcrafted, which, you know what, I believe him, because you come up against the same levels a lot. No point going to the shop at this point, because everything in this game costs more gems in the roguelike mode, right? So, yeah. The game has... it doesn't have fascinating combat or interesting level design, and most of the secrets you're basically only going to find if you have the magic goggles. So they're not in places where you can expect secrets to be, honestly. The only way you'll find it is by getting the magic goggles far enough in order to find where you have to shoot the air for the secrets, which admittedly a couple of games did do, but a couple of those games, like those retro platformers that did that, aren't exactly the most notable platformers these days. Like, I know one game that did that. That's Mylan's Secret Castle. It basically required those sorts of secrets to be found in order for you to stand at... that fucking slime. It's so unpredictable sometimes. Jesus Christ. The game is... yeah, Mylan's Secret Castle required you to find a lot of secrets in order to continue on, right? And that game isn't remembered by anybody except people who watch the Angry Video Game Nerds. So, it's like... this game really doesn't have anything special going for it. It's frustrating, that's for sure, but it just doesn't really have anything that stands out other than the fact that it's frustrating. It doesn't have interesting combat like Ghouls and Ghosts. It doesn't have a lot of like secrets like Ghouls and Ghosts. It doesn't have the sort of satisfying whip combat of Castlevania. You just throw out these little shitty dinky knives for your main weapon. When in Ghouls and Ghosts, you had at least like... you had things like the spear to work with, and you could throw out a ton of those goddamn spears. And at least in Ghouls and Ghosts, you had at least one mistake to make. But in this game, you don't. So it's just thoroughly more satisfying thoroughly less satisfying, I should say, sorry, by default. So yeah, there's just... This game is something I can't recommend just because it doesn't do anything particularly special. I mean, as a callback to retro platformers, it's okay, but it doesn't do anything that made those platformers special in the first place. The graphical... Ow. That was my fault. I saw the Switch, I stepped on it, and I just really didn't have anywhere to go. So, you know, I kind of got myself into that situation. But the game just doesn't have anything that makes those platformers special, except for the frustrating difficulty. And the frustrating difficulty was not what made those platformers special. That's just what made them take less than an hour. Because those games were actually really short once you knew what you were doing. But, yeah. That was a quick look at Bard's Gold. It's only $5, so if you really like the look of it, you might as well go for it. I mean, like, you don't have that much to lose, but yeah, it's, I can't say anything that positive about it, honestly. It's just not that fun. Alright, you know what, I got one positive thing to say about it. Despite the fact that it's actually decent mechanically game, just the fact that it doesn't really stick out. It was made in Game Maker Studio, and that's what I'm making my game prototype in, so, you know, that's actually kind of neat. But other than that, it's just not really that interesting or that much fun, really. That's all I've got. It's not that fun. This has been Blue Maxima, and I'll see you all next time.